Welcome, welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Okay.
Amen.
All right, let's take a look at what we're looking at here. Okay. So the part that we were looking at was in Genesis chapter 4, and it has to do with the story of Cain and Abel and how God accepts the offering of Abel, but does not accept the offering of Cain because Cain just brought what was at hand. It wasn't a really sincere offering. And of course, Cain now is angry and is God is now warning him. And in a sense, this is a major statement in terms of human psychology and human behavior. So it's back here where God is asking here, why is Cain so upset, right? Halo im tetiv seit. Behold, if you do well, you will have uplift. Ve'im lo tetiv, but if you do not do well, lefeta chatat rovetz, means at the opening, sin crouches. Ve'elecha shukato, and its desire is towards you. Va'ata timshol bo, but you can have dominion over it. You can control it. So last week we did a section about the fact that you can say "Halo im tetiv seit," or you could say and seit v'im lo tetiv. That you could read it either way. And in the one case, it means, behold, if you do well, you will have uplift. But the word seit, we weren't sure last week, but I did check it out. And it says seit im lotetiv. And here we are. Let me find the place here. Okay. They make it nisiut avon, meaning quoting a verse from Leviticus chapter 22:16, where it says, Vehesio ot avodan choshma. They will incur guilt requiring a penalty. So there we have it that it can, if you don't do well, you'll have seit, but their seit means something negative. And last week I wasn't certain about it, but now I've been checking it out. That is, in fact, what it means. So, going on to the next statement here, imtative, if you do well. Tanya, so we see it's an early source prior to the year 200. Amar, but this looks like it is anonymous. We don't know who is the author of this. But Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael, the Holy One, blessed be He, said to the Jewish people, said to Israel, Barati Yetzahara, I created the Yetzahara, the desire to do evil. Uvarati lo tavlin, but I also created for it a spice, an antidote. Imatem oskim b'Torah, if you choose to occupy yourself in Torah, ein atem nimsarim beyado, you will not be delivered over into his hands, into the hands of the Yetzer Hara. Shine'emar, how do we know this? It states, Halo im tetiv seit. It says, behold, if you do well, seit, you will have uplift. And we'll take a look at the little footnote here. How do we understand this? Mefaresh halashon tetiv, when it says tetiv, you will do well, and it's got the word, obviously, the root tov in it, right? Kamo the Torah. So it understands that word tetiv as meaning occupying yourself in the Torah. And again, how do we understand that? Kamoshe Katuv, as is stated in the tractate Brachot, page 5a, Ein Tov Ela Torah. There is no Tov except Torah. In other words, Torah, the word Tov only means Torah, or means Torah means Tov, as it states in Proverbs 4, Ilekach Tov Natati Lahem, for I have given you good merchandise. And the verse goes on to say, Torati al ta'azovu, do not forsake my Torah. So we'll see further about.
Lekach is merchandise.
Lekach could mean, yes, merchandise is sometimes. Kicha, from to take. In other words, stuff that goes from one hand to the other. Yeah, right. From the root lakach, or to take.
Doesn't it usually get translated because of good doctrine?
You could understand it that way. There are ways to understand it as that as well, but the general idea
I've
is
never seen ki lekach tov natati lachem
yes.
translated that way.
Aha, okay. So there's a wonderful midrash on Truma, Parshat Truma in Midrash Rabbah that basically understands it in that sense. In other words, something that merchandise in the sense that with merchandise it passes hands, you know, basically you're looking to move merchandise. So, yeah, okay. But doctrine is fine too, although I'm not sure other contexts where the term lekach means doctrine per se. So going on, ve'im love, but if not, atim nimsarim beyado. If not, you will be turned over into his power. Shine'emar, how do we know this? From a continuation of this verse, which says, Lefetach patat rovates. At the opening, sin crouches. So going here, down here, Mefaresh halashon chatat, and so we understand this term chatat, kinui liyetzahara, that it's a simile for the Yetzirah. It's another expression for a metaphor, possibly for the Yetzirah. And understanding the Yetzirah is essentially, I would say, it has to do with the kinds of feelings that are engendered by the amygdala, by that part of the brain. So appetites, etc., right, that come from there, which either can be appetites for good or appetites for bad. They're not in that part of the brain. We're not distinguishing between one or the other. We just know that we have ta'avut, deep desires, etc. Okay, so let's go on. Let's hear. Um, Make sure. Yeah, right. Here we go. Sorry, I need to find the place again. Right. Okay. Uve Uviur halashon, and to clarify further this expression lefetach, at the opening. Lefize, that according to this, nireh de mechavein, that what it's talking about, what it's implying is lemasha katuv b'Sanhedrin, to what is written in Tractate Sanhedrin on page 91b. The Yetzer Hara sholet ba'adam, that the Yetzer Hara has control over an individual, misha'at yitziato la'olam, from the moment he comes into the world, vezehu she'amar lefetach, and that's why it refers to lefetach, at the opening, klomar, that is to say, miyad sheyetzeh, from the moment that he goes out, lefetach, or la'avir ha'olam, into the air of the world. In other words, from birth, from birth. Yetzer Hara sholet bo, the Yetzer Hara is able to control him. Ve'im bashanim ba'ot ein oskin b'Torah, and if in the coming years, in the years that follow, he does not occupy himself in Torah, az ha'yetzer hara lo yazuz mimkomo, then the Yetzer Hara will not move from its place. It'll remain in its place. In other words, basically controlling human behavior. The Torah is one of the ways in which this is the tavlin, the spice that God has given us to encounter and overturn the Yetzer Hara and not let it control us. Clearly, and we've had these kind of discussions before, if we didn't have the Yetzer Hara, we wouldn't even procreate, we wouldn't do anything in the world. We need the Yetzer Hara, but at the same time, we need to be able to master the Yetzer Hara and not have the Yetzer Hara master us.
Does the Yetzer Hara come first?
When you say come first, yes, yes. It's appetite. So if there were no appetite, if a baby didn't have an appetite to suckle, it would die. So basically, Yetzer Hara is there it's that part of the brain, I think, that 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 from which we derive our appetites. I mean, it's also the fight or flight part of the brain as well. So onwards, just a little bit more here. Velo od. And not only this, in other words, not only do we have the factor that by studying the Torah, we can learn how to master ourselves. Not only that, ela shekol mas'o umatano bach. Not only that, but um, all its dealings are with us, right? Shene'emar ve'elecha tchukato, because it says its desire is within us. So in other words, it's not like we get rid of the Yetzer Hara. We will always have a Yetzer Hara, partially because, as we mentioned, we need it to survive, right? And so we're going to have these appetites as long as we're alive. But if you wish, atamo shelbo, it says you're able to govern it. Shinemar vatatin sholbo. It says, and you can control it. It's possible for you to control. So he's going to go on with something I think quite interesting here. Ne'er, right? It would appear lomar, that the point of this part of this comment that we just had, im ata rotze lilchom imo, right? If you're willing to battle against it, as lo ledavar she'enata nimsar biado, right? It isn't only the fact that you will not be delivered into the control of the Yetzer Hara, hainu shelo lishlot bo, and that's bach, right? That is, it will not be able to control you. Shezeh ba'al yedei ha'esek ba'Torah, which comes through occupying yourself in Torah. Ela od tuchal limshol bo. Not only that, in other words, not only will you be able to defend yourself against the Yetzer Hara, but you will actually be able to govern your Yetzer Hara, ulachof oto lekabel schar, and to force it in such a way that you will gain reward. Al zeh, regarding this. In other words, not only will you be able to defend yourself from destroying your life, okay, or getting yourself into deep trouble, you're not only that, but you will be able to, in fact, control it in such a way that you will become a deserving human being. And we're going to get an example. And it says it's similar to what is written in the tractate Avodah Zarah on page 17:2, that one sage said to his neighbor, or to his friend, excuse me, Nezel, let us go. Pitcha de zonot. Let's go over to where what this means is a door of prostitution, right? Of prostitutes. Menachpe leyitzra, and we will overrule, right, our evil desire. Unekabel agra, and we will receive reward for it. So, in other words, I'm not suggesting that one should do such things, but the idea is this is simply an illustration of saying that not only do you protect yourself, but you gain reward and worthiness in overcoming it. In overcoming it. B'Iyin b'Torat Kohanim, he says there's further, check it out in the Torah Kohanim. This is the Midrash on the book of Leviticus. Sof Parsha Acharei, at the end of Parsha Acharei Mot, Ulefanenu Sham, and before us. In other words, we have it coming up, and we'll take a further note of these concepts. So, in some ways, this is answering one of the ways to answer the question of, why is there evil in the world? Because you could say that the Yetzer Hara, promotes that. Yes, Golda.
Hiya. Um,
Good to join.
Basic instincts.
Yes. Right.
would be the a term that we would understand, I think.
Right. Yeah.
Basic instincts, things we need to survive, to grow, to become what we need to become. But we do set times for meals. We do set times for sleeping. We already do some of this stuff. Normally, a diet absolutely is that.
Yes.
I want that chocolate cookie, but if I eat that chocolate cookie, that's not going to be
That
good
isn't
for
it.
me. And I will feel guilty later also. But fight or flight, oh God, we need that. We need that all the time.
So this is going a little bit deeper than that. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, this is talking about the fact that we all have our dark side. I mean, that's another way to describe the
Oh,
Yitzhak.
no, I get that. I get that.
And so, I mean, you can feel very ashamed. I mean, it's the part of us that wants to be secret. That's why it's the dark side. But what it's saying to us is that in studying Torah and in learning the various values of Torah and trying to, internalize them, we are able to control the Yetzer Hara. It is not saying it is the only way to do it. I mean, I want to make sure that people understand, if you're listening to this lesson, that I'm not claiming it is the only way. I think there are other religions that also certainly delve into this. But the truth is, you know, our appetites they are not based on morality. They're based uh,
Right.
on necessity in a way. But we
You've heard about the marshmallow test, right?
go on. No, I don't believe I
Oh,
have.
the marshmallow test. It's a thing they do with kids, with little kids.
Yes.
Uh, they give them a marshmallow, and they says, if you wait, you can have two marshmallows if you wait
Oh,
10 minutes or whatever it is,
yes.
or you can eat it now, and
Yeah.
you will get no other marshmallow.
Right.
So it's what kids, the kids, you learn real quickly which kids have that ability to control themselves
Uh-huh.
long enough for the second marshmallow.
Right. That's
Yeah.
that's very good because here
Yeah,
it's
and that's you
just giving
find that
everybody
out
else.
real early in life too.
Right. Yes. No,
Who
I
has patience and
right.
who
Right.
sees the gain and who learns from the gain. Yeah.
Yes. So
Okay.
How
and
does because okay, does Yetzer Hara, which I love to think of as the fight or flight basic instincts
yes.
drive,
Yes.
not like the movie Basic Instincts,
Uh-huh.
um, which was horrific. Um, how does this address evil in the world
So
and a
yes.
Christian view of original sin?
Right. So I don't know, just to answer the second part first, is I'm not sure to what degree I can get into that. But I do believe this is sort of saying the Yetzer Hara is the evil, it's what allows evil to introduce itself into the world. And, of course, people ask a fundamental question, which is, why is there evil that in a world that is created? If you're claiming that God is ultimate goodness, and ultimate, the ultimate benefactor, etc. Why did God create a world and ultimate control? Why did God control a world with evil in it? And in some ways, this is trying to answer that question by saying that in some senses, evil is a good thing. That while evil in and of itself is bad, God also, along with that evil, created something to help us to control it, and not only that, but to gain merit, to gain reward. That if evil is understood in that, if we approach evil in that way, we will not be governed by it. But if people don't, even out of ignorance, this is where ignorance can get you into a lot of trouble, you know, that if you don't use your cerebral cortex to develop it and develop a way in which to look at one's own evil, recognize that it's evil, right? Because there are people who don't see it as evil. They only consider the pleasure that they get out of satisfying their appetites and don't consider anything else. And if you recognize that the terrible stuff that can happen as a result of just allowing your appetites to control you, and how it affects the lives of others as well, right? You know, yes, I think I'm going to leave it there. It's too easy to get into political examples, although I think, wars are fought on some levels because of this. And of course, we know the kind of destruction that war creates. And if people moved towards learning how to be kind and just, right? Because you need both the kindness, the chesed, but you also need mishpat, a din. You need justice as well to go along with that. Um, we wouldn't perhaps be doing some of the stuff that we're doing. But I do think it's addressing the issue of how does an essentially good creator put evil into the world, and why? Obviously, there's a lot more that can be said, but I think it's interesting how early this comes on. And of course, even before that, we have Adam and Eve eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which has a relationship because it also allows the Yetzer Hara, the snake, the serpent also represents the Yetzer Hara and appetite. We see that, right? And yeah, we can go on if you like. Okay, do a little bit. Yeah. Okay. Going on. Ve'im lo tetiv, but if you do not do well, right? If you do not act properly, Rabbi Meir says, Kol t'nai she'eno kitnai b'nei Gad u'v'nei Reuven. Any condition, if you make an agreement, a condition that is not of the type of the condition made, the agreement made between with the children of God and the children of Reuven, meaning the tribes involved. And here he has his footnote here, and we can see dav. In other words, first of all, what it means is davar v'hafucho, meaning if you do this, you will have A, and if you don't do this, you will not have A. Right? That you have to say both sides of the agreement. Ukamosha katav Moshe, Kamosha Amar Moshe, as Moses said to the tribes of Reuben and Gad, who wanted to settle on the east side of the Jordan, which was not originally part of of the land that was promised to the Jewish people. Im Ya'avoru, he says to them, if you cross over the Jordan and help conquer the land of Canaan along with your brothers, right, then you can in fact settle on the east side of the Jordan. V'im lo ya'avoru, but if you don't go over, you will not allow. So that's the idea of an agreement of the nature of Reuven and Gad. So going on, a nortnai, you cannot really consider it an agreement. You cannot really consider it a condition. V'hainu dichtiv, and we see this exactly in this case. Im tetiv says if you do well, v'im lo tetiv, but if you don't do well, right? In this example that we have here, taking a look at this. V'dat Rabbi Chanina, he says, however, the opinion of Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel, son of Gamliel, de lo ba'enan tnai kaful ba'alma, that in general we do not require this doubling of the condition. V'shani hacha, and here in this particular case, right now in the case that we're looking at, this is a different situation. You can't derive, he's saying, Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel is saying, you can't derive this principle from here. Mishum, because develot naikaful, because even if you did not have this doubling of the condition, hava amena, in other words, if it just said, if you do well, you will have uplift, im tetiv tekabel schar, if you do well, you'll receive reward, ve'im lav lo tekabel, right? But if not, right, suppose it did not state, if you don't, we could understand it to mean, ve'im lo tekabel, lo schar, v'lo onish, not only are you not going to receive reward, you won't receive punishment either, right? It's purely a choice, right? If you want to do it, you'll get reward, but if you don't, you're not going to get reward, but you're not going to get punished. kamash malan. And for that reason, right, that's for the reason why we have to have, in this particular case, T'nai Kaful, we need to have this statement of both sides of the condition, if you do it and if you don't do it, she'im lo tetiv, and for that reason it says that if you do not do well, lefeta chatat rovetz, sin will crouch at the door. So we have to have both, because if it didn't say the negative side of it, it might not, you just don't get reward. That's all. But there's no punishment involved. But now we know if you don't have, you have a choice, and if you choose the one side, you're going to get something good, and if you don't do the one side, you're going to get something bad, right? Okay. V'yesh laha'ir, and we need to clarify, lefi ma shekatuv bebrachot zayin aleph, according to what is written in the tractate Brachot of the Talmud, page 7a, kol dibur sheyatza mepi hakadosh baruch hu, any statement that came out of the mouth of the Holy One, blessed be He. In other words, any divine statement, lo tova, that is for the benefit, that discusses some kind of benefit, afilu al t'nai lo chazar boy. He says, even if there's a condition regarding this, God will not withhold it. In other words, even if He says, if you do this, I will do something good for you, generally it's saying, even if you don't do it, right, even though it says a condition, God is going to benefit us ultimately, right? Which is sort of suggest that's exactly why in this case here we have to have both sides of it, right? Imkain, and if this is the case, however, Hayah HaKadosh Baruch Hu Mufrach Kiviyachol. In this case, we'd have to say that the Holy One, blessed be He, would have to, as it were, the faresh, to be specific, the imlo tetiv, etc. That if you do not do well, mishum de'im lo hachi, because if God were not to say, if you don't do well, you're going to be punished, haya mitkayem halashon, right? In that case, the term, right, the expression se'et, right, b'chol ofen shehu, there'd be uplift no matter what. No matter what, there'd be some kind of goodness. In other words, it's not just that you won't get good. You, according to this last little piece that we read from Brachot, right, they'd have to be good anyway, even if you didn't choose the good. The imkain, right, and if this is the case, ein ra'aya mikan, right, there is no proof from this statement here, that in general, right, that we require a doubling of this of the condition, meaning if you do and if you don't, we need both statements, right? There's no this particular situation and given our understanding that God will do good for us, even if we don't expressly, even though if God says, if you do well, you'll reward, even if you don't, if you just choose not to go out of your way, God will still reward you, right? On some kind of level. So V'yesh lomar, and to respond to this, we could say, da'ein hakadosh baruch hu chozer midiburo letova, letova, we could say that even though we hold that the Holy One, blessed be He, never retracts from His good statement, right, for His statement of promising some kind of benefit, hurak hecha, we only apply that statement shebeminiat kiyum hatna ein avera, that in refraining from doing that particular the condition, there's no transgression involved, right? So in other words, we're now saying that no matter what, God will do you benefit, even if you don't fulfill the condition. It has to do with not actually doing something that is a transgression. Aval hecha shebemehaminia yesh avera, but in a situation where if you don't fulfill the condition, there is a transgression, ein svara. There's no reason, right? Sheyeh hachoten niskar, that someone who sins should benefit. And not only that, there's a proof for this. Sharei gamba lotnai, right? Because even without a stated condition, Ella Havtacha, stamit, but a general promise. In other words, where God promises to do something good without a condition prior to it. Efshar shetishtane mipnei hachet. One can say that, in fact, that promise of doing good without conditions, right, can change if one sins. If one, in fact, does sin, you negate it, and you will negate this idea of God in general doing good for a person. Ukemoshe katuv, and we have an example of this. The Brachot Dalet Aleph in the tractate Brachot, page 4a. She'afal pi, that despite the fact shehivtiach Hakadosh Baruch Hu leYaakov, that despite the fact that the Holy One, blessed be He, promised Jacob, ushemarticha, this is what he said, I will guard you bechol asher telech, anywhere you go. Nevertheless, this is later on when he was going to meet Esau. Remember, God had just promised him he was going, not just, but had promised him before that he would protect him wherever he went. And now he was about to meet Esau on his way back from having served Laban for 20 years. Jacob was worried. He was afraid. Shema yigrom hachet. He was worried lest sin cancel out that promise. Vedok QED. V'yein lekaman, and look below, Rosh Perich Vayishlach. We're going to see that this is the Parsha, Rosh Parshat Vayishlach. This is the Parsha that discusses Jacob's meeting up with Esau so many years later. And we'll mark this here for this, and excuse me one moment while I take care of this. Actually, that is on the previous page, so I will put it here. This is where we'll be next time, right here. Okay. Very good. And I will stop the share and stop the recording.